At the funeral, my cousin bragged, "The house is ours now," until the lawyer revealed it was never theirs. I stood at the edge of my grandmother's funeral, my heart heavy with grief, but my cousin Jessica's smug voice cut through the somber air like a knife. "The house is ours now," she whispered to her husband, loud enough for me to hear, her lips curling into a triumphant smirk. My stomach twisted. The house, Grandma's cozy 2-story home in Raleigh, North Carolina, where I'd spent every summer of my childhood, was the heart of our family, and Jessica thought she'd snatched it away. I clenched my fists, my nails digging into my palms, as mourners shuffled past the open casket. The air smelled of lilies and tension. I wanted to scream, to call her out right there in front of everyone, but I held back. Little did she know, the lawyer's envelope, tucked under his arm, held a truth that would shatter her greedy dreams. The organ played softly, and I felt eyes on me, some pitying, some curious. Jessica's words echoed in my mind, fueling a fire I didn't know I had. This wasn't just about a house. It was about years of loyalty, love, and promises Grandma made to me, Samantha, the granddaughter who stayed by her side. I glanced at the crowd, distant relatives, neighbors, and Jessica's clique of cousins who'd barely visited Grandma in her final years. They were all here now, circling like vultures. Hey, before we go deeper, drop a comment below and let me know where you're watching from. Your city, your country. I'd love to know who's out there connecting with this story. I took a shaky breath and adjusted my black dress, trying to focus on the eulogy. But Jessica's whisper kept replaying. "The house is ours now." How could she be so sure? Grandma's will hadn't even been read yet. My heart raced as I caught the lawyer, Mr. Thompson, standing near the back, his face unreadable. Something about his stiff posture told me this funeral was about to become more than a goodbye. Let me take you back a few years, before Grandma's illness, before the whispers and the greed. Growing up, I was the one who spent every weekend at her house. It was a modest place, with creaky wooden floors and a porch swing that groaned under our weight as we sipped lemonade. Grandma taught me how to bake her famous peach cobbler, her hands guiding mine as we rolled dough. "Samantha," she'd say, her blue eyes twinkling, "this house is full of love. It's yours one day, if you keep its heart alive." I didn't think much of it then, just a sweet promise from a woman who meant the world to me. But not everyone saw it that way. Jessica, my cousin, was always the golden child in her mother's eyes. Aunt Linda, Grandma's youngest daughter, never hid her favoritism. At family gatherings, she'd brag about Jessica's fancy job in Charlotte, while I, a school teacher with a modest apartment, was barely acknowledged. "Jessica's going places," Aunt Linda would say, her voice dripping with pride. Meanwhile, I was the one driving Grandma to doctor's appointments, mowing her lawn, and sitting with her through chemo. Jessica showed up maybe twice a year, always with an excuse: work, travel, life. Yet somehow she was the one Grandma's siblings whispered about as the heir. I wasn't blind to the family dynamics. Grandma's 3 kids, my mom, Aunt Linda, and Uncle Greg, had their own grudges. Mom and I were close, but she'd always felt overshadowed by Linda's loud personality. Uncle Greg, a quiet man, stayed out of it, but his kids, my cousins, were quick to side with Jessica when money came up. I remember one Thanksgiving when Jessica laughed off my suggestion to help with Grandma's medical bills. "Oh, Samantha, you're so noble," she said, her tone mocking. "Gran's fine. She's got savings." I bit my tongue, but the sting stayed. What hurt most was how invisible my efforts felt. I wasn't just helping Grandma. I was keeping her stories alive, her laughter, her love for that house. Jessica? She only called when she needed something, like the time she asked Grandma to lend her $5,000 for a new car. Grandma gave it, of course, because she hated saying no, but she'd confide in me later, her voice soft. "Samantha, you're the one who doesn't ask. That's why I trust you." Back at the funeral, those memories burned in my chest. Jessica's smugness wasn't new, but it was bolder now, like she knew something I didn't. I glanced at Mom sitting beside me, her face pale. She squeezed my hand, whispering, "Don't let her get to you." But it was hard. The house wasn't just a house, it was Grandma's legacy, my safe haven, and Jessica was ready to claim it without a shred of shame. As the service ended, I caught Mr. Thompson's eye again. He gave me a small nod, his lips tight. Something was coming, I could feel it. The crowd began to move toward the reception hall, but I lingered, watching Jessica laugh with her husband, already acting like she owned everything. My heart pounded. This wasn't over yet. The reception hall smelled of coffee and casseroles, but the air was thick with something else. Suspicion. Folding chairs were scattered around, filled with relatives clutching paper plates and murmuring in tight clusters. I stood near the buffet, picking at a piece of cornbread, my eyes locked on Jessica across the room. She was holding court with Aunt Linda and a few cousins, her laughter sharp and forced. Every now and then, she'd glance my way, her smirk saying, "I've already won." My stomach churned, but I kept my face neutral, refusing to give her the satisfaction of seeing me rattled. Mom was at my side, her voice low. "Samantha, don't let her get under your skin. She's always been like this." But it wasn't just Jessica's attitude. It was the way others were acting, like they knew something. Uncle Greg's wife, Karen, kept shooting me pitying looks, while my cousin Brian, Jessica's brother, avoided my gaze entirely. The room felt like a pressure cooker, ready to explode. Then came the first jab. Jessica sauntered over, her heels clicking on the hardwood floor, her husband trailing behind like a loyal dog. "Samantha," she said, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. "You must be so tired from all those years helping Gran. Don't worry, we'll take good care of her house." Her husband Mark chuckled, like it was some inside joke. I froze, my fork hovering over my plate. "It's not yours yet, Jessica," I said, my voice steady but sharp. Her smile faltered, just for a second before she shrugged. "Oh, sweetie, it's just a matter of time." The words hit like a slap. Around us, conversations hushed, and I felt eyes on me. Some curious, some amused. Aunt Linda swooped in, her perfume overwhelming. "Now, girls, let's not make a scene," she said, but her hand rested on Jessica's shoulder, not mine. The message was clear. I was the outsider. My throat tightened, but I swallowed the hurt. I wasn't going to let them see me break. As Jessica walked away, I caught a glimpse of Mr. Thompson, the lawyer, standing near the doorway. He was watching the room like a hawk, his briefcase clutched tightly. Something about his stillness made my pulse quicken. Was he waiting for the right moment? I didn't know. But the tension in that hall was suffocating, and I wasn't the only one feeling it. The reception dragged on, but my mind was stuck on Jessica's smugness and that house, Grandma's house with its faded blue shutters and the garden I'd helped her tend. I was refilling my coffee when something odd happened. Mr. Thompson approached me, his face unreadable. "Samantha," he said quietly, "can we talk for a moment?" My heart skipped. I nodded, following him to a corner of the hall away from the crowd. He leaned in, his voice barely above a whisper. "Your grandmother was particular about her wishes. Just stay sharp tomorrow at the reading." His eyes darted toward Jessica, who was laughing loudly across the room. Not everyone knows the full story. Before I could ask what he meant, he straightened up and walked away, leaving me with a knot in my chest. What was he hinting at? Did Grandma leave something in the will that Jessica didn't expect? I was still processing when another strange moment hit. My cousin Emily, Uncle Greg's youngest, sidled up to me. She was quiet, not like the rest of her loud siblings, and we'd always gotten along. "Sam," she whispered, glancing nervously at her mom, Karen. "I overheard Dad talking to Mom last night. He said Gran made a change to her will a few months ago. Something about fairness." Her voice trailed off as Karen called her over, but her words lingered. A change? Fairness? My mind raced. Grandma had been weak toward the end, but her mind was sharp. Had she seen through Jessica's act? Back at the buffet, I noticed a small detail that sent a chill down my spine. Among the condolence cards on a side table was an envelope with Grandma's handwriting. My name, Samantha, scrawled across it in her familiar loopy cursive. It wasn't with the other cards, almost hidden behind a vase of flowers. I reached for it, but Aunt Linda's voice cut through the air. "Samantha, don't touch those. They're for the family to sort later. Her tone was sharp, and Jessica's head snapped up, her eyes narrowing. Why were they so protective of a card? My hands trembled as I stepped back, pretending to let it go. But I knew that envelope was important. The rest of the reception passed in a blur, but those moments, Mr. Thompson's cryptic warning, Emily's nervous whisper, and that hidden envelope, stuck with me. Something was coming, something Jessica didn't expect. I just had to hold on until the will was read tomorrow. As I left the hall, I glanced back at Jessica, still laughing, oblivious. She thought she'd won, but I was starting to believe Grandma had one last surprise. That night, I couldn't sleep. Jessica's smug, "The house is ours now," echoed in my head, mixing with memories of Grandma that flooded back like a tidal wave. I lay in my childhood bedroom at Mom's place, staring at the ceiling, the weight of the past pulling me under. I kept thinking about the years I'd spent with Grandma, the ones Jessica conveniently ignored. 5 years ago, when Grandma first got sick, I was the one who moved closer to Raleigh to help. I'd drive over after teaching all day, my old Honda rattling down her street, just to make sure she ate dinner or took her meds. One night, I found her sitting on the porch, wrapped in a quilt, looking frail but stubborn. "Samantha," she said, her voice soft but firm. "You're the only one who doesn't treat me like I'm already gone." I laughed it off, but her words stuck. She'd pat my hand and say, "This house, it's more than walls. It's for someone who understands that." I thought she was just being sentimental. But now, with the will reading looming, I wondered. Jessica, on the other hand, was a ghost back then. She'd breeze into town maybe once a year, always with a new designer bag and excuses. I remember one Christmas when Grandma was recovering from surgery. I'd spent weeks organizing her care, juggling my job and her needs. Jessica showed up late, waltzing in with a store-bought pie, acting like she'd saved the day. "Gran, you look great," she chirped, ignoring the oxygen tank by Grandma's chair. Later, I overheard her asking Grandma for a small loan to cover some vague business expense. Grandma sighed and wrote the check. I wanted to scream, but I didn't. I never did. Then there was the family reunion 2 years ago, when Aunt Linda bragged about Jessica's big promotion while dismissing my teaching job as cute. Grandma caught my eye across the table and winked, like she knew the truth. Later, she pulled me aside in the kitchen. "Don't let them dim your light, Samantha," she said, squeezing my arm. "You're the one who shows up." Those moments, small and quiet, were our bond. But to the family, I was just the helpful one, not the heir. Jessica was the star, always louder, always shinier. Now lying in bed, those memories fueled a mix of anger and hope. If Grandma had changed her will, like Emily hinted, maybe she'd seen through the favoritism. Maybe she'd remembered who was there. But doubt crept in. What if Jessica had manipulated her? Grandma was generous, sometimes too generous. I clutched my pillow, praying that envelope with my name meant something. The next morning, we gathered in Mr. Thompson's office, a stuffy room with dark wood paneling and the faint smell of old books. The family sat around a long table, Mom beside me, her hands clasped tightly, Aunt Linda and Jessica on the other side whispering, Uncle Greg and his kids in the middle looking uncomfortable. Jessica wore a sleek black blazer, like she was already the executor of Grandma's estate. My heart pounded as Mr. Thompson cleared his throat and opened the will, his glasses perched on his nose. "Thank you all for coming," he began, his voice steady but heavy. "This is the last will and testament of Margaret Ann Wilson." He read through the formalities, debts to be paid, small bequests to charities. Then he paused, and the room went silent. I could hear my own breathing. Jessica leaned forward, her eyes gleaming. "To my daughter Linda," Mr. Thompson read, "I leave my jewelry collection and $20,000. Aunt Linda nodded, satisfied, but Jessica's smile widened. I braced myself. "To my son Gregory, I leave my car and $15,000. Uncle Greg gave a small nod, no surprise there. My mom got a similar amount plus Grandma's antique clock. I waited, my hands sweaty. Where was my name? "And to my granddaughter Jessica," Mr. Thompson continued, "I leave my investment account, valued at $50,000. Jessica let out a small gasp, her hand flying to her chest like she was shocked, but her smirk said otherwise. Aunt Linda squeezed her arm, whispering, "That's my girl." My heart sank. $50,000? That was huge. The house hadn't been mentioned yet, but I could feel it slipping away. I glanced at Mom, her face pale, her eyes urging me to stay calm. Mr. Thompson turned the page, his expression unreadable. As for my home at 142 Maple Street, my breath caught. This was it. Jessica straightened, her husband nudging her with a grin. The property and all its contents. Mr. Thompson paused, and the silence was deafening. Are to be sold with proceeds divided equally among my children. Jessica's face froze. Aunt Linda gasped. What? The room erupted in whispers. Sold? No one was getting the house? I sat there stunned, my mind racing. Jessica's victory lap was crumbling, but I wasn't celebrating yet. Something felt off. Mr. Thompson's eyes flicked to me, just for a second, and I remembered that envelope with my name. There was more to this. I could feel it. The room was chaos, Jessica arguing with her mom, Uncle Greg muttering, but I stayed quiet, waiting for what came next. The chaos in Mr. Thompson's office was electric. Jessica's voice rose above the murmurs, shrill and indignant. Sold? That's not what Gran wanted. She snapped, her face flushed. Aunt Linda chimed in. This is outrageous. That house is Jessica's birthright. I sat frozen, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. The house, Grandma's house, was slipping through everyone's fingers. But something in Mr. Thompson's calm demeanor told me the story wasn't over. He raised a hand, silencing the room, and adjusted his glasses. There's one final provision, he said, his voice cutting through the tension like a blade. He pulled out a sealed envelope, the one I'd seen at the funeral, with my name in Grandma's loopy cursive. My breath caught. Jessica's eyes narrowed, her arms crossed tightly. Mr. Thompson opened it carefully, pulling out a single sheet of paper. This is a codicil, added by Margaret Wilson 3 months ago, notarized and legally binding. The room went deathly quiet. Even Aunt Linda stopped muttering. He began to read. To my granddaughter Samantha, who cared for me with love and loyalty, I leave the option to purchase my home at 142 Maple Street for $1, provided she maintains it as a family home and never sells it for profit. A gasp rippled through the room. My jaw dropped. $1? The house was mine? Jessica's face twisted in disbelief, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. Aunt Linda shot up from her chair. This is absurd! Mother wasn't in her right mind. Mr. Thompson didn't flinch. Margaret was fully competent, Linda. I met with her myself. She was clear. Samantha earned this. He slid the codicil across the table toward me, his eyes steady. I reached for it, my hands trembling, and saw Grandma's signature, strong and sure. Tears pricked my eyes. She'd seen me. All those years, all those quiet moments, she'd seen me. Jessica exploded. This is a scam! Samantha manipulated her. Her husband tried to calm her, but she yanked her arm away, glaring at me. You think you're so perfect, don't you? Playing the dutiful granddaughter. Her words stung, but I didn't respond. I didn't need to. The truth was on that paper, in Grandma's own hand. Mom squeezed my shoulder, her eyes shining with pride. Uncle Greg coughed awkwardly, avoiding everyone's gaze. The room was a mix of shock, anger, and, on a few faces, quiet approval. Cousin Emily gave me a small smile, like she'd known all along. The office cleared out slowly, the air heavy with unspoken grudges. Jessica stormed out, Aunt Linda trailing her, still muttering about lawyers and appeals. I stayed behind, clutching the codicil, my heart full but heavy. I didn't feel like gloating. This wasn't about beating Jessica. It was about Grandma's trust, her love, her home. As I walked out with Mom, she hugged me tightly. She knew Samantha, she whispered. She always knew who you were. Back at Grandma's house that evening, I stood on the porch, the familiar creak of the swing grounding me. The air smelled of jasmine, just like it did during those summer nights we'd spent talking. I could almost hear her voice. Keep its heart alive. I would. I'd live here, fill it with family, maybe even teach my own kids to bake her peach cobbler one day. Jessica's tantrum didn't matter anymore. She'd gotten her $50,000, more than enough, but the house was mine, not because I fought for it, but because I'd loved Grandma without expecting anything in return. The family was fractured now. Aunt Linda sent me a nasty text, accusing me of stealing Jessica's future. I didn't reply. Uncle Greg called later, his voice gruff but kind. "You deserve it, Sam," he said. "Don't let Linda get to you." It wasn't perfect, but it was enough. I'd never been the loud one, the shiny one, but I'd been the one who showed up, and Grandma had seen that. As I sat on the swing, I thought about what this all meant. Life isn't about shouting the loudest or grabbing the most. It's about the quiet choices, the late-night hospital visits, the laughter over a shared meal, the love that doesn't demand a reward. Grandma's codicil wasn't just about a house. It was her way of saying, "I saw you, Samantha. I saw your heart. Hey, thanks for sticking with this story. If it hit you in the feels or reminded you of your own family drama, drop a comment below. What would you have done in my shoes? And if you want more stories like this, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next one. Let's keep the conversation going."